Welcome to my program, Bashy's Corner. We all know that asylum seekers and refugees is an international problem. People run for their life and seek protection wherever they can and wherever they get. Recently, we have seen the arrival of hundreds and thousands of asylum seekers from Syria coming to Europe and try to settle down here. In a recent United Nations report, it is said that there are almost 65 million displaced people around the world. Some are displaced in their own country, some are living in refugee camps, and only a fraction of them tried and reached Europe. But the perception in Denmark and European countries is that everybody from the world wants to come here and settle here. And we will discuss all those issues with our special guest, Eva Singer. You represent Danish Refugee Council, right? And you are head of the Asylum and Repatriation Department. Why do we have this perception that everybody wants to come to Denmark, and people say we cannot take millions and millions of people here?
In fact, it is a bit strange. For the past year, we have heard about refugees in the media around the clock almost. We have heard a lot of facts. We have also heard of a lot of things which are not facts. But in spite of all these facts that we hear so often, it is the situation today compared to a year ago that more people in Denmark believe that a greater percentage of the world's refugees are actually in Europe and in Denmark. So it's not just the facts which do not seem to be understood, but it's more the proportions, I think, which pose a problem. That people listen to the news, they see refugees in Europe, but they somehow do not see the millions of refugees in other parts of the world.
But this is a very educated, illuminated, enlightened society. I can understand if we were living in a jungle somewhere or in a desert. They should not fall for this kind of negative and false news. Why do they do that?
Well, I would like to turn it around maybe a bit.
Please.
And say at the same time as we see these misperceptions, we also see more and more Danes and also more and more Europeans who volunteer in different connections to help refugees.
Yes.
So I think it's important that we have both trends, and I think for the sake of the refugees, we should try to encourage the more positive, the more humanitarian approach in the population.
Okay. So let's get back to a little bit towards you. You have been with the DRC, or Danish Refugee Council, only for 5-6 years. But your career with humanitarian work goes back, way back. Soon after university, you joined United Nations Center for Human Rights in Geneva. What attracted you to that?
Well, at the time, I thought it was the most obvious thing to do, actually. Okay. Having studied law, for the sake really of working with human rights and also working more internationally than what you normally would do as a lawyer, obviously. So for me it was quite natural to go this way, and then obviously along the way there were lots of coincidences which made me choose the path that I actually did choose, but the direction in a way was there from the beginning.
From your mind was set?
Yes, yeah.
Oh. And after that, you did some volunteer work with DRC in Denmark.
Yes.
What was that?
Well, that was actually in the department where I am today.
Okay.
Yes, so it was a bit of a chance that I had. I had about 6 months while I was waiting to be sent to the Philippines with UNHCR.
And that was in 1990?
Yes.
You were sent there?
Yeah. So for those 6 months, I actually didn't know really what to do, so I thought I would spend my time with...
Who sent you to Philippines?
Well, that was the UNHCR, High Commissioner for Refugees, where I was able to get a position as what we call a junior professional officer. Okay.
But Philippines doesn't have any refugee problem. Why to go there? Or why
well, at the time,
there?
yes, at the time you had quite a lot of Vietnamese refugees, the boat people.
And they were coming from that way?
Yes, they were still living in camps in the Philippines. There was a big resettlement program. But apart from the Vietnamese, and they were the largest group there was also a small group of refugees coming from other countries. And UNHCR was responsible for determining whether they were in need of protection and assisting them. And those nationalities are more or less the same as we see today, actually.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking to ask you, because I remember the Vietnamese refugees came by boat, and many have also drowned at that time in the big sea. And now nobody talks about that.
No.
Then you moved to Sweden as a refugee training officer. Who did you train?
Mostly the immigration officers in the different Nordic countries.
Okay.
The UNHCR office in Stockholm covers the Nordic countries and the Baltic countries. So I had a colleague who concentrated on Finland and the Baltic countries, and I covered Sweden, Norway and Denmark, and to some extent Iceland, but there was not so much to do there.
Okay. Many people in Denmark do not know what United Nations Refugees does. Can you just tell us a little bit, what is the main purpose of that organization?
Well, to put it very briefly, it's to protect refugees and to find durable solutions for refugees. Durable solution could be to return voluntarily to their home country when the conditions are right.
So they're put in camps and then from there they can go back?
Yes, yeah. That's kind of more the traditional way we have seen, and it's actually also the way we see a lot of refugees in the world today living in camps. We also see refugees living in urban areas with or without assistance from the local government.
But even when people have lived in camps for many, many years, they've got children who go to school locally, learn the language, isn't it difficult for them to go back to the country where they come from? People normally don't go back.
Well, it really depends on a lot of circumstances, and the first and most important is whether it's secure to go back. Once it is secure to go back, many people will need some kind of assistance, depending on how long they have been outside of their country. If the situation has lasted for a long time, things will have changed in their home country, they will have changed, they will need assistance to find there might be land disputes. That's often a problem because some people have taken over their land if they have been gone for 20 years and so on. Sometimes the children might not even speak the language because they have been going
to... They might not want to go back.
Yeah, so they have gone to school, maybe in the refugee camp, learning a different language. So obviously there are some issues there, but these issues are there to be dealt with.
Yeah, and to be solved.
Yes.
From Sweden, then you came back to Denmark again, you know, in full circle, you know. And now you started as a deputy head of asylum division. Why that move from, you were many years in Sweden, no? Why come back Denmark?
Well, that was a private reason. I had a family, and my husband and I, my husband is from Ireland, we decided that we would like to be with our family, either here or in Ireland, once we started to have children.
And Denmark was the choice?
Denmark was the first possibility,
of course.
And then we stayed.
Okay. Well, I mean, Denmark is one of the best places to stay. But now you are head of asylum and repatriation. I noticed this thing. So let's first talk about Danish asylum system. Many people think that it is very easy to obtain asylum in Denmark. This is what I hear from them. Is it true?
Well, it depends on what you mean by easy.
Please.
Because I think that the Danish system is actually fairly good compared to many other European countries. I think we have to remind ourselves about that. We also see that large groups of asylum seekers are recognized as refugees. For example, the Syrians are recognized. The problem is not so much the recognition of Syrians, but what kind of status they get. And attached to the status, what kind of rights they are able to get. I think this is where the biggest problem is, in a way. Because if you do look at the percentage of how many asylum seekers are recognized as refugees, it's actually relatively high. It's
compared to Danish population? What do you mean by high?
No, I mean the term, if you look at the number of asylum seekers who come to Denmark, last year it was 85% of the asylum seekers who had their case dealt with in Denmark after the Dublin case and so on.
Okay.
So 85% were actually recognized as refugees.
And
so I think we have
Syrian?
to remember that.
Are they mostly Syrian?
Most of those people were Syrians, but also people coming from Eritrea, from Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, some of them from Somalia. So these are the countries where we have seen refugees coming from for many, many years, and these are still countries we know where the conflicts are violent and the state system is not able to protect people.
Okay. So my next question is, please explain to our viewers, how does the Danish asylum system works the moment a person comes to the border or in Copenhagen and say, I want to seek asylum, until he or she is rejected or accepted?
Yeah. Well, the first hurdle, you could say, the first difficulty is whether you can actually have your application dealt with in Denmark. And this is what we refer to as the Dublin system, the Dublin regulation.
Yes.
So if you have traveled through another European country, if you have sought asylum in that country, or if you have close family in another country, Denmark will not actually deal with your application. So Denmark will ask the other country to take responsibility.
Why? Dublin Convention is true that when you land in a country, first country of your arrival, you should seek asylum there. But why the criteria of a family being there, or doesn't it seem strange that I want to ask for asylum in Denmark and I'm told no, you can't get it there?
Well, when I talk about family, it's basically if you, for example, you are stopped in Denmark and you have your wife in Sweden. If your wife is living in
Near
Sweden.
family, you mean?
Yes, so close family, that is important as well to decide which country is responsible.
So what happened then after you apply for asylum?
So if you're allowed then to stay in Denmark, then you will be called for an interview at the Danish Immigration Service. And maybe you will be called for 2 interviews, depends on how complicated your case is. And then they might either give you a residence permit immediately, which means that you will be moving out into the municipality, and there you will start some kind of integration program. You may also be rejected, depending on your asylum case, and then the case is automatically sent to the Danish Appeals Board, and they will look at your case again. At this stage, you will also get a lawyer. Until then, you don't have a lawyer. But at the appeals board, you will have a lawyer representing
After rejection, that you can get a lawyer?
Yes, after the first rejection,
yes. What happens that if you apply and you are rejected, are you sent back right away?
No. As I said, first of all, you have one possibility of appealing the decision. If the appeals board, if they also reject your case, then you're supposed to leave the country on your own. Not many people do that. No. Most of them wait for the police to come and talk to them. As when I said, in principle, you're supposed to actually pay for your trip back home. Not many people will have this money.
They won't have that money to pay back.
So it will be for the Danish police to organize the return. And then, of course, this is where we see people waiting for many years because it's difficult to return them to their home country.
So while they're waiting on humanitarian permit, do you work closely with Red Cross? Because people, you are a private organization, a humanitarian organization. Of course, you are funded by the government, but also by donors. But Red Cross, are they the one who run the camps?
Well, the Red Cross, they run more or less half of the camps in Denmark.
Who does the rest?
The other camps are run by the municipalities.
Okay.
So in the old days, the Red Cross, yes, it's true. In the old days, Red Cross had all of the camps.
Yes, I remember.
But in the past, I'm not sure, in the past 10 years or so, more and more of the camps are run by the different municipalities. Yeah. So we obviously work very closely with the Red Cross, but also with the municipalities when we visit the reception centers where the asylum seekers they live to give them legal advice.
Coming back to asylum and your department, so what are actual duties of your department?
Well, there are actually quite a lot.
Okay.
First, we have what we call early advice, which is more of a general nature with the asylum seekers when they arrive in Denmark. And this advice is basically very simple.
Are you allowed to meet them?
Oh yes, yeah. We call them for meetings in big or smaller groups, and we have interpreters there. And then we tell them, for example, if you don't understand the interpreter, it's really important that you tell the authorities that. We tell them, you have to trust the authorities, you have to tell them everything immediately, because if you don't, and then you come after 1 year and say, oh, I forgot to say something, then it might be too late.
So you prepare them?
Yes, we try to prepare them. We also try to tell them not to listen to all the rumors in the camps, because of course there are many rumors, and many of them are not true, and it could actually mean that somebody who has a very strong asylum case, they end up saying something wrong because they have heard from somebody else.
Of course.
Yeah. We also have what we call the Dublin legal aid. So the persons who are not allowed to seek asylum in Denmark, but who might have to go to another European country, they can appeal this decision, and we can represent them. That means we will interview them and write a complaint to the appeals board. Of course, if they're going to Germany, it's not such a big problem. It's a long waiting period and so on, but it's not such a big problem. But if they're going to countries like Hungary or Bulgaria, Italy, they're very, very big problems, very problematic to get access to the asylum system, to get access to reception centers. We know in Italy that people sleep in the streets because they don't have enough asylum reception centers.
But you also deal with repatriation.
Yes.
It's not a good word in many people's ears. Who do you repatriate?
Well, this is also counseling. This is a special law in Denmark on repatriation, and it means that people who are here with a residence permit, it can be people with refugee status, but also people with an immigrant background, they can choose to go back to their home country, and then they will receive financial assistance from the municipality. But since this is actually a very big decision, they have to sign a paper that they are not going to come back. But they come so they come to us first, and we have a very thorough discussion. We make sure that they understand the consequences. We make sure that they have a plan of what to do. Where will they live when they come home? How will they be able to earn a living, maybe? And many of the people who return are actually older people who have lived in Denmark for many years, but want to return to their home country. We see many people from Bosnia who would like to return. We see people from Turkey, also from Vietnam, actually. So different groups, but some of them are older people who are prepared to go home.
Many people in Denmark don't understand the Danish Refugee Council, what it does. They think that they are helping people to come and, you know. Could you just shortly explain to us why Danish Refugee Council was established, when was it established, and what is its vision, what's values?
Yeah, well, actually this year, 60 years ago, we were established.
60 years ago?
60, yes. Wow. So we actually have a little celebration now, which is obviously not a very positive celebration because it means that there's the refugees. But we were established in 1956 because of the Hungarian crisis, the Hungarian refugees who came to Denmark and who needed help. So there were just normal people who decided to establish an organization to help them find a job, to help them find a place to live. And then this developed. Obviously there were more and more refugees in the world and in Denmark. So we have developed over the past 60 years, and we are now helping refugees in Denmark, but actually most of our work is in the countries outside. Yes.
That is my second question. What are Danish Refugee Council's international work? But you also, I mean, I know yourself and other top officials visit always other countries. What kind of work what is that?
Well, different kinds of tasks that we can do, but often actually we assist UNHCR. We assist the UN system in providing food, providing shelter, providing water, sanitation.
In camps?
In camps.
Okay.
Most of the time in camps, but also, for example, like in Lebanon, where the Syrian refugees are not actually in camps, we provide them with vouchers, with access to the health system. We try to intervene if they have protection problems with the government and so on.
It's a big work.
It's a lot of work, yes.
It is. The work the Danish Refugee Council does, is it important for the society we live in?
I think so. I think it is important to assist the refugees as much as possible, because if they are able to integrate, it's much better for the Danish society in the long run. It's obviously important for the refugees themselves to feel welcome and to have somebody they can ask if there are things they don't understand, to be able to learn the language, to have volunteers who will tell them how to find the local grocery, and all these things that we take for granted, but which are not very easy when you come to a new country.
I understand that Danish Refugee Council is also supported by the Danish government financially, quite a bit.
Well, it's actually my department that's supported by the Danish government.
Okay.
The asylum department, we receive our money on the national budget. But most of the work we do otherwise, we basically get contracts from municipalities, or we get contracts from UNHCR outside in the world, or from other countries as well, but also, of course, from Danida.
I know that Danish Refugee Council is very vocal sometimes in their opinions. When the government made this 3 years of rule, and you call it pure poison, not you, but your General Secretary.
Yeah.
And you believe that immigration austerity gives inhuman waiting times and all that. Why so? I mean, then aren't you interfering in the political work?
You could say so, but I think as a humanitarian organization, this is what we are supposed to do. We see the problems, we see the difficulties facing refugees. We also see, especially maybe in my department, because we work with the legal rights, the legal access, we see areas where we believe this is basically in contradiction with the European Convention on Human Rights or some of the UN conventions. So I think it's our duty to raise these issues and point them out.
As we discussed that there are 65 million people around the world, Danish Refugee Council Secretary General in an interview has expressed a fear of Armageddon. Is it not fear-mongering?
No, I think that would be to misunderstand his point of view.
Okay.
But you have to understand that we are often met with this argument, but we can't have all 65 million refugees in Denmark. So, of course, as you say, we know that. That's not what we're talking about. So sometimes you have to kind of maybe be a bit blunt and say, no, that's not what we're talking about.
Of course.
But we're talking about something else, and we have to start from that point of view rather.
Do you think that those information campaign your organization have done has changed the situation, that people understand the work better and the asylum system?
Well, I would hope so, but I'm not sure. I think that the people who are interested, they understand better, but maybe not all people are as interested as we are.
That's true. Danish Refugee Council holds 4th place in NGOs as an NGO advisor, because there has a list of NGOs in the field of 500 NGOs, and they are number 4 as a well-functioning. It's a big honor.
It is, yes.
In the end, I wish to ask you a very little bit difficult question. Are you aware that when Danish delegation goes abroad to take refugees from camps, it is a policy for the last many years that they don't take Muslim refugees, they try to take Christian refugees, and the argument is that the Muslims are not easy to integrate. Isn't it a little bit too much that you are going to help people and then you just say, hey, you can't come into Denmark because you're Muslim?
Well, first I have to say that that's actually not true.
Okay.
I have myself been participating in selection missions to Lebanon, and most of the Syrians that were resettled from there were Muslims.
Yes.
So I'm not sure about the percentage.
Well, I have an article here.
Yes.
It is from 2014. It says Denmark avoiding Muslim refugees, and they have documented what I'm saying. And I also remember the Danish politician from the Liberal Party have also and said that. But it's just that it hurts me that especially when asylum and people who are running for their lives, they say you cannot come. And there have been debates, you know, in Denmark where many politicians say that they try to avoid, you know.
But obviously it shouldn't be so, because we are giving shelter to refugees who are in need of protection. But I'm not sure about those figures, because as I said, most of the Syrian refugees who come to Denmark, they are Muslims. So
well, they came
so maybe
through the
some but maybe some politicians would like it to be like that. But in fact, what happens is that all kinds of refugees, as we know, they come to Denmark also through resettlement.
Okay. So my last question. Now we are coming close to our interview. Where do you see the refugee situation, asylum seeker situation in 10, 15 years? Is going to die down, or is it going to increase?
I think it will increase. I think it will, because we're not really anywhere close to finding solutions.
Why not?
We're tackling with the symptoms. We're tackling with trying, in Europe, for example, trying to keep all the refugees away, to make deals with various countries in Africa and the Middle East to make sure that the refugees stay there. So we're not anywhere close to dealing with the problems in terms of why do people become refugees? Why is it that they leave the countries where they first come to because of the situation there and so on? So I'm afraid it will continue.
So let's hope, Eva, that the politicians would listen to your views and they will come to senses. Thank you very much for coming. It was a pleasure talking to you. And I'm sure that our viewers have listened to Eva's views and have a little better understanding of asylum system and how Denmark receives asylum from different countries. Until next time, take good care of yourself.